Hello everyone, welcome to the Miss Stories and enjoy watching. Luda was very tired, and the only thing she wanted to do was to go home and go to bed. Although it is unlikely that she would be allowed to do so at home. Her husband and mother-in-law were waiting at home. She had been married to Victor for 5 years. He took care of the girl beautifully, and everyone around only envied her. Girlfriends rumored that she grabbed a city, and even with an apartment. But Lyuda didn't care if she had an apartment. She just fell in love. The rose-colored veil began to fall from her eyes about 6 months after the wedding. Victor and her mother-in-law joined the family. Everyone has a mother-in-law or a father-in-law. But Maria Ivanovna was at their house every day, even though she lived separately. And everything was in the tradition of mother-in-law stories. Luda did the dishes wrong, looked at her husband wrong, didn't have time to cook a meal, and so on. She did everything wrong. She was also a country bumpkin with no clan or tribe. Oh, and she was not very pretty, and her mother-in-law did not understand what her beloved son saw in her. Now Luda herself does not understand what she has found in Victor. In all their family life, he worked for 6 months at most, and that's if you take away the breaks. But no one understands or appreciates him. But he liked to eat good food. Luda took extra classes at school and everything she could to earn more. My mother-in-law did not help with money. Sometimes she bought Victor clothes, saying that their family could not afford to buy normal things. Luda would have left him long ago, but that was where to go. There was no way she could put money aside, and you have to pay at least a month's rent at once. On crossing the threshold, Lyuda was met by her mother-in-law, who did not even allow her to undress, and immediately started scolding her. "How is it possible that I have been sitting here for 2 hours and your husband is still not fed? So, what's the problem?" "There's soup in the fridge," said Luda. "Come on, what's soup for dinner? Go quickly and prepare a proper meal. Oh, and Bidya needs to iron his shirt. He has to go to the interview tomorrow." If it were not for the accumulated fatigue, Luda would not have crossed her mother-in-law. But now she had 2 choices: either obediently go to the job of her mother-in-law or go to bed to rest. She could not stand it and said, "Victor has been home all day. He knows how to cook. He can make something himself. And you came to us 2 hours ago. Why not cook for your son?" The mother-in-law and her husband stopped talking. Maria Ivanovna stared at Luda. How dare she disobey her and not follow her instructions? Her mother-in-law and husband thought that Luda owed them for life. All the more so because she came from some remote place and was lucky to have a husband. He fell in love with her, and she moved into a large 2-room apartment. My mother-in-law came to her senses and started to get indignant. "How dare you talk to me like that? You must have forgotten where we got you out of, for which you should wash our feet and kiss our hands." And that's where Luda's patience finally snapped. "Yeah, I'll just fill the basin with water and start washing your feet." The girl got up from the sofa and went into the room to gather her things. She took out her bag. She thought only of one thing: not to fall from exhaustion. While Luda was gathering things on the threshold of the room, Victor appeared and said rudely, "Where do you think you're going? I'll leave you alone with your mommy. Let her iron your shirts, cook your meals, and everything else. And I'm leaving. I'm not going to tolerate this kind of attitude," said Luda, and continued to gather her things. Victor stood there in shock at the way his wife answered him. At the same time, his mother-in-law appeared behind him and said, "What are you thinking? What about the husband because he is hungry and not collected? So feed and pack him." "And I am leaving your precious apartment for good," said Luda, and pushed her husband out of the room. Victor and his mother stared at her again, and Maria Ivanovna said, "And who will pay the rent? Who owns the apartment? Let him pay for it. And I'm not even registered here." "Yeah, what's she thinking, village girl? She wants a residence permit. We'll register all kinds of people here, so that then our apartment will be in your hands," said my mother-in-law rudely. "Goodbye then." Luda left the apartment. She was so tired that she could barely make it to the elevator. She went downstairs and out into the courtyard. The bag was so heavy, and also a bag of notebooks, that it was not easy for her to walk, and her legs felt cotton after work. Luda got to the roadway and then walked along the road. When she reached the bus stop, she sat down on a bench. She had no energy left to go further. She closed her eyes and fell asleep right there on the bench. Genya was driving home after a hard day. He was tired but happy. He had counted everything today and realized that his veterinary clinic had finally turned a profit this month. He had loved taking care of animals since he was a little boy. His mother was used to the endless stream of kittens and puppies they nursed, and then gave into good hands. so when her son said he wanted to be a veterinarian, she was not surprised. In 5 years, he was known practically everything in town. Animals in his hands were malleable and the owners loved it. He also always got the treatment right. That is why his clients often said that it was time for Eugene to open his own clinic. 6 months ago, his mother summoned him for a talk. "Genya, here's the money. I've been saving it for your wedding and other expenses. But why don't you open your own clinic?" Genya was shocked. Yes, he knew that his parents worked in good jobs, but he thought that everything was invested in a spacious apartment, a summer house, and his education. But it turned out that his mother had been saving. After all, she's retired now, so it's money from back then. "Mom, how can I take the last of it from you?" "First of all, not the last," she winked slyly, "and secondly, not to take it away, but to lend it." So today, Genya paid the employees' salaries, but some of the money in an envelope to give to his mother, and he still had some profit left over. Even though it was not grandiose and he was still a long way from being a millionaire, but he was glad. Though it is thoughtful, he kept a good eye on the road. And then a dog threw himself under the wheels. Genya stopped, but when he got out of the car, he saw that the dog ran away into the distance. So everything was all right. But then the girl at the bus stop caught his attention. She was asleep. There was a bag next to her, and she was clutching the bag in her hands. She didn't look homeless, and he was worried. It wasn't winter yet, but it was late fall, and it was cold outside at night. Plus, there were hooligans walking around. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked and shook her shoulder. But she weakly opened her eyes and fell back into sleep. Luda heard him, but did not know what to answer. Then she felt herself rising into the air and sleep again. Valentina Mikhailovna looked with surprise at her son, who was carrying the girl in his arms to their house. Genya guiltily walked straight into the living room in his shoes and put the stranger on the couch. Then he left the apartment and returned with a bag and a bag, and saw his mother wiping his footprints off the laminate floor. They walked to the kitchen. "Son, who is it?" Genya told how he found the girl, that he had already called Grisha, and he would be here soon. Grisha is a childhood friend. He's a psychotherapist. "Mom, you can tell by her that she's not a bum. There is just something wrong with her. In the bag looked notebooks are lying. I couldn't leave her at the bus stop." Valentina Mikhailovna nodded approvingly and poured tea. She did not mind. After all, it is necessary to help people. Who knows what happened to the girl? In half an hour, Grisha arrived. He listened to the girl, took her temperature. Luda even opened her eyes briefly. In terms of health, she was fine. There were no signs of heart disease or colds, but even outwardly, you could see that she was very tired. "I'll give her an injection and let her rest." Luda hardly opened her eyes and saw that she was in an unfamiliar room. It smelled of baked goods and medicine. Turning her head, she saw a stool next to her, with a glass of water and medicine on it. She had no idea where she was. At that moment, a woman in her 60s entered the room. She was dressed in a house suit. The woman looked at Luda and said with a smile, "Are you awake? Well, come on, get up. Now, I'll call Genya." Only he did not have to call. He just entered the room to inquire about the well-being of a stranger. "Thank you. I feel fine. I do not remember how I got here," said Luda. "I was driving home from work, and a dog rushed under my wheels. I stopped. The dog was fine, but then I saw you. I asked how you were feeling, but there was no answer. Then I picked you up from the bus stop and brought you to my house. Then I called my friend Grishka. He is a doctor and examined you. Grisha said there was nothing wrong with you and gave you an injection so you could rest easy. It is probably better for you not to talk yet. You get up quietly and let's go to breakfast." Genya helped her get up from the couch, took her to the bathroom, waited until she had washed her face and cleaned herself up. Then they went into the kitchen and had breakfast. Genya helped her to walk back and sit down on the couch. "If you can and want to, tell me what happened to you. Why are you so exhausted?" "There's not much to tell. I work as a teacher in a school. I am assigned to a class where I am the class teacher. There are inspections, inter-school competitions. You could say I live at work and my husband is unemployed at home. He constantly demands that I iron shirts and make dinner. I've always tried to do everything. And yesterday in general, when I got home, my mother-in-law started scolding me about why I don't take care of my husband like I'm supposed to. Why dinner was not cooked, even though I had just gotten home from work, that I wasn't living within my means and so on. I packed my things and left." And Luda lowered her head guiltily. "It was not yesterday, but the day before yesterday. You slept so much." "Oh, excuse me please, I'll go now." "It's okay, but where will you go now?" Eugene asked. "I'll stay with a friend for a while until things settle down." "Stay with us. The apartment is big, I'm always at work, and my mother will be glad to have a companion, especially such a beautiful one." Valentina Mikhailovna happily nodded her head, and Eugene smiled charmingly. "Thank you. But as soon as I find a place to live, I'll leave right away." Eugene smiled again, but did not say anything. Luda went to work and filed for divorce. Her soul was easy and peaceful. Victor came to her work several times, tried to arrange a scandal, but the guard cooled his ardor that he would now call the police. This went on until one day Evgeny came to pick Luda up. He came up to her, took her by the hand, and they began to walk out of the school. And Victor shouted, "Where are you taking my wife? What do you care? And she's not your wife anymore, so don't let me see you near her again," Shenya warned. Victor was a cowardly man by nature and was afraid he'd get involved in any conflicts, so he quickly withdrew. Ex-husband began to be replaced by his mother-in-law, who every night waited for Luda at the gate and kept saying, "Who's going to pay the rent, you rascal? You live in it." "I haven't lived there for a month, so I'm not going to pay for it." "Who lives in it? Let him pay." "And that's your son and you," Luda answered. Mother-in-law did not stop, constantly insulting Luda, and one day a guard heard Maria Ivanovna shouting and called the police. The woman was immediately taken to the police station. Zhenya came to pick Luda up often. They began going to the movies, the theater, or just taking walks in the park. He was a good conversationalist and very kind. They felt good together, and Luda realized that she had fallen in love. It meant that she had to leave him and Valentina Mikhailovna as soon as possible, who also liked her a lot. In the evening, Luda could not sleep at all and decided to go to the kitchen for tea. Zhenya was sitting in the kitchen, drinking wine. "Can you sleep, either? Maybe some wine." "I don't drink, but I probably won't refuse now." Zhenya got up from the table, took out a glass, and filled it with wine. "Well, here's to us," and she supported him. And then everything was like in the movie. She was not aware of her actions. After that night, Luda tried to avoid meeting Zhenya. And then her friend made her happy by saying that she had found a good apartment for her. Walking to the door with her bag, she bumped into Zhenya. He stood staring, not understanding what was going on. "Where are you going?" Luda tried to smile naturally, so he did not understand anything and answered, "My friend called me today and told me that they had found me an apartment and I was going to move there. I won't bother you anymore." "And what makes you think that you are embarrassing us?" Evgeny asked and made a step to her. "Did I do something wrong?" "No. Everything is all right, I just," said Luda shyly, and she shut up. "I'm afraid of my feelings, so let's be afraid of them together." He embraced her and kissed her tenderly.